last on the previous panel, so he's just joined us. I want to quickly not spend too much time with our welcomes and introductions so that we can kick off straight away. It's so great to have everyone here. Welcome to Limud Live with the South African Jewish Report. For those of you that are Limudniks will know that August is Limud month and we couldn't go without connecting with our community. So it's great to have you all with us. Tonight is the session that you've arrived to is really looking at Belarus or Jewish Belarus in the post-Soviet world, and we'll leave it all up to Artur to take us through that. My name's Ryan Davis. I am your host for the evening. Please feel free to reach out in the chat with any questions that you have from the get-go, and we will share those with Artur during our session. As we know, this is not our usual limud. We're having an online session, and we'd love you to engage. Just bearing their limud values in mind, some of them being respect, arguments for the sake of heaven, and most importantly, building connections, which we love. So please feel free to, in the chat now, let us know where you're coming to us from or which session you went to before this. Also, please feel free to use the reaction buttons, the jazz hands, the thumbs up at any stage. And also, if you're comfortable to turn on your camera, please do, so that we are able to have a real participation, and Artur will be able to see you. I also see that Deborah's joined us from the Together Plan in London, so great to see you as well. Thanks for being with us. Artur, Belarus has been in the news more than most other countries in the last week, and we felt that we just had to make a place on our program tonight to hear what's going on, what's it like for the community, and obviously the Together Plan is at the forefront of supporting communal life in Eastern Europe, but specifically in Belarus, where you're coming to us from. The Together Plan was also featured in the South African Jewish Report last year in August 2019, so not a stranger to our shores already. But I'm going to stop speaking there because there's so much to share, we know that. Artur is very comfortable, by the way, for anyone to ask any questions you may have. He will let us know if there's anything based on the situation that he will not feel comfortable to respond to. But just to let everyone know that our session is being recorded for security purposes, and also to make content available to everyone after the session. So without any further ado, over to you, Artur. Welcome, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for joining and your interest in Belarus. My name is Artur Livshyts. As Ryan mentioned, I'm the country director of the Together Plan in Belarus, and I live in Belarus. I was born in Belarus. I'm a member of the Jewish community in Belarus and been involved in Jewish community development work for over 20 years. So it's great to see you all. I know that Belarus is hot on the headlines these days around the world, and I know that you'll have lots of questions. I'm happy to respond after my short session, but I believe that to know about Belarus, to see the present Belarus, we need to have a little understanding of the Belarus in the past. Our organization's mission is basically to give the communities of Belarus a voice and empower them to strengthen the community engagement around the Jewish identity, heritage, and history, while connecting the people who live in diaspora to their Belarus ancestry and homes that they once have left behind. I'm going to be talking about the Jewish life in post-Soviet Belarus, past, present, and future. And I just want to give you a heads up about what Belarus and where Belarus is located. So Belarus is an Eastern European country that borders to Russia, to Ukraine, Lithuania, Poland, and Latvia. The territory of Belarus, is around 207,000 square kilometers, with its population 9.5 million. The Belarus itself, a Jewish Belarus, I would say, takes it's a very rich start from the Pale of Settlement. And as you know, the Pale of Settlement has been formed by the decree of the Catherine II in 1791. It was a western region of the Imperial Russia with borders that varied from time to time, but more or less they stayed from the Baltics to the Black Sea. And that was the territory of a very intense permanent residency of the Jews, where they were allowed to live. Beyond this Pale of Settlement, Jews were not allowed to live, only with the specific and special permission from the government, from Catherine, and only 200,000 Jews lived outside of the Pale with the permission. If you look at the map, and you could see this pale in the white color that stretches from the Baltics to the Black Sea. And if you look at the black and yellow lines, which forms the map of current Belarus, so you could see what a significant territory in the Pale of Settlement was occupied by present Belarus. And in 1897, 5 million Jews lived on the territory of the Pale, and around 1 million was living on the territory what would now be the present Belarus. Now, the main activity of the Jews in the Pale of Settlement was, of course, the commerce, crafts, tailoring, shoemakers, and we all know that from the stories. We all know from the songs, this is the very interesting picture going back to 1916, a photo of the Jewish marketplace in Bobruisk, and you could see so many different faces. And again, in the Pale of Settlement, in the towns, there was not only Jewish population lived. There was Russians, there were Ukrainians, there were other religions, but significant number, and the majority of the people living in towns were were Jewish. And of course, the life in the Pale wasn't that easy. The life in the Pale had many times anti-Jewish decrees. Even before the Pale, the Jews had to be moved from one place to another. They've been kicked out of the places. Just to mention that the Jews appeared on the territory of Belarus in the 14th century. And throughout that period until the Pale, they were kind of moved from one place to another with the different decrees, with the different kings, and the life wasn't easy. But again, in the Pale of Settlement, as with the anti-Jewish decrees, there were pogroms. The most significant pogroms took place in 1881, 84, 1903, and 06. And of course, there was a big wave of Jewish immigration to the west and to the United States. So the life in the Pale of Settlement, life in the Pale of Settlement wasn't that great. There was was economically bleak. It was poverty. The most of the people relied on the small services. So they couldn't be in the support of all the population of the Pale. And because of this poverty and dangerous conditions, around 2 million Jews left the Pale from 1881 to 1914, mainly to the United States. And we know to South Africa as well, and where to and how I will tell you a bit later in my presentation. Some people left the country before the Nazis invaded the territory. And of course, people who stayed, they were killed during the Holocaust. Just to mention that during the Holocaust in Belarus, over 800,000 Jews were killed. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the significant people whose roots, whose ancestors, and who themselves were born in the territory of Belarus. The famous Rabbi Schneur Zalman, who was born in 1745 in a place called Liozna. It's a present-day Belarus city. He was the founder of Chabad, and he was the first rabbi of Chabad. Soloveitchik dynasty, and we know that the Soloveitchik is a very famous dynasty, and they were the founders of the innovative method of teaching Talmud. And the Chaim Soloveitchik, the father of Joseph, was born in Volozhin, and Joseph was born in Brest. And his father moved as a rabbi to be a rabbi of Brest, and that's why the methods that he was teaching was called Brisk method. After the city that is called Brisk, it's close to the Polish border. And this is a very famous dynasty. Now, of course, as we know, that in the Pale of Settlement, the most important place for the Jews was the synagogue. And in the present Belarus, if we would take the territory of the Pale of Settlement, until the 1917, there were enormous numbers of the synagogues. Just in Minsk, in the capital, we had 83 synagogues. Mogilov had 50, Bobruisk had 42, Vitebsk 30, Gomel 26, and I can go on and go on numbering the number of synagogues, hundreds, I would say even thousands of synagogues on the territory of Belarus in the Pale of Settlement. As we say here, you know, the 2 Jews, 3 synagogues. I'm going to talk about a few buildings that survived, and one of them is the Sloaning Synagogue, probably one of the most significant buildings that has survived the Soviet era. It was built in 1642 in a Baroque style. It was one of the most beautiful buildings in the Lithuanian Duchy, the territory of Belarus. But again, it was built before the influence of the Baroque style of the West. And Slonim was one of the cities that in the 17th century hired its first rabbi, was called Moshe Limak, was the highest authority on halakha from Lithuania. So he came, he was rabbi of Slonim. Now that's how the synagogue looks today. Unfortunately, through the Soviet period, through the Soviet era, most of the buildings haven't survived. They were either destroyed during the World War II, or they became abandoned or used for the warehousing. So this is how the synagogue looks today in Slonim. That's how it looks inside. Still, you can see how beautiful it was back in the Pale of Settlement, but we are hoping that one day, you know, the organizations around the world and people who are supporting the revival of Jewish community will be able to make those changes and help some of the buildings to have a second life. Now, just to give you a few updates on specifically Slonim, because we were talking about Slonim. The Jewish population of Slonim in the middle of the 7th century was 1,200 people. Then it grew as the Jews have settled. It grew to the 1797 to 1,400, and to almost 12,000 in 1897. That's how a typical Jewish shtetl, Slonim, now here specifically, has looked before the revolution. People, again, streets, trading. Now, we all know about Marks and Spencers. So the famous Michael Marks have immigrated from Slonim in 1882, and he has formed his empire of Marks and Spencers around the world. As in every city, probably except Belarus, you know, you've got Marks and Spencers. In just getting closer to the Holocaust, in 1939, the population of Slonim was 25,000 people. Out of them, 17,000 was Jewish population. Interestingly enough, the population grew closer to what we call a Great Patriotic War, when the Nazis invaded Belarus from Poland. And the reason it grew higher, because people were running away from Nazis from Poland, because the Sloaning is a southwest of Belarus. It's quite close to the border with Poland, and the Jews from Poland were running away from Nazis. Unfortunately, as Holocaust hit this part of the world, almost all of the Jews of Sloaning were killed, and only 200 of them survived. Synagogue in Endura. Synagogue of Endura is was built in the 18th century, and the significance of this synagogue, that this synagogue held heads of the Kagals meetings around the territory of Belarus from different communities. Synagogue in Ashmana was probably one of the latest that was built on the territory of Belarus in 1912. Again, it survived, and you can see it the way it is now. Unfortunately, the way the synagogue has been kept through the Soviet era didn't give it a good preservation, and it is what it is now, and hopefully again that in the future that will change, and Jewish community of Belarus will be able to restore this. Famous artists. Let's just run through. I'm sure you're all aware of the artists that come from Belarus, and one of them is Yehuda Pan, who wasn't born in Belarus, but he moved to Vitebsk, which is Belarus now, and he was a Jewish painter and an art teacher, and he's probably one of his past missions was that he was a teacher of Marc Chagall. And of course, Marc Chagall, well-known Marc Chagall, who actually, I don't know if you know, has done 4 black squares before Malevich. And Chagall is one of the artists whose artwork and paintings are being copied around the world. And of course, he's one of the most expensive artists, and his artwork Lovers was sold on Sotheby's for $28 million. Chaim Sutin, also a Belarus-born artist in 1893 in Smilovici, that's the Minsk region. There's a museum school that actually, interestingly enough, supported by school itself. They have an exhibition. There's wonderful art class that kids learn about the story of Chaim Sutin. He's not too far away from Marc Chagall being one of the most expensive artists, as his artwork, like a beef carcass, was sold for 28 million as well. He's not as popular, but he's not being copied, and his artworks are mainly shown in the galleries around the world. Now we move to the most interesting part, I think, in entertainment. And we have, I don't know if you have known that Lisa Kudrow has roots in Belarus. Her father's grandmother immigrated from Ilya, Belarus, to Brooklyn in 1921. Winona Ryder, paternal grandfather, Saul Horowitz, was born in Minsk. She's an ex-girlfriend of Johnny Depp, if you didn't know about that. Gwyneth Paltrow, she herself said that she's the result of generations and generations of rabbis back in Minsk, and she called her family as a rabbinical dynasty. Liv Tyler, I don't know if she's famous that much as the previous 3, but her family came from Klitschev, which is a Mogilov region, and she's a model, she's an actress, But the biggest popularity she got because she's a daughter of Ira Smith, whose basically ancestors come from Belarus as well. Well-known Amy Winehouse, born in Rakov, near Minsk. Tragic death, and there's an exhibit was opened in 2013, which delved into her family history as far back as her great-great-grandfather's immigration from Belarus in 1890. Probably the most famous Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford. His grandparents immigrated from Minsk to New York in the beginning of last century. His grandmother's last name was Lipschitz, which I think I kind of have to be proud of. Scarlett Johansson, whose great-grandfather and grandmother lived in Nesvich, which is also a town not far away from Sloaning. And Scarlett Johansson is one of the favorite actresses of Woody Allen. Well, famous Kierkegaard Michael Douglases who come from Mogilov, Chavusy. They still have some relatives who still live back in Mogilov. Larry King, the most famous journalist. Mother comes from Minsk and father comes from Pinsk. Just trying to keep the timing, right? I'm sure I'm all right.
Still doing great, Artur. We're still good with the time.
Steven Seagal, I don't know if you know this king of Aikido, who already came to Belarus and visited the land of his grandfather, who was born in Bobruisk. And obviously, he has met the current president, and he might also throw some light on the current situation in Belarus. Well, fashion. A few very famous people who come, Ida Rosenthal, of course, the inventor of the bra. She comes from Rakov, Belarus, and they're now talking about putting a memorial to a bra in Rakov. The only one thing that is under discussion now is what size it should be. So I'll keep you posted on that one. Ralph Lauren, born Lipschitz, and whose grandparents also come from the area. Oops, sorry. Again, we go to the quite important ones is the Israel founding fathers. Chaim Weizmann, born in Motul, Belarus. That was Russian Empire and Pale of Settlement, first president of Israel. Yitzhak Rabin, 1611's prime minister, whose mother was born in Mogilov, Belarus. Menachem Begin, well-known Menachem Begin, born in Brest, Belarus, seventh prime minister of Israel. And I'm not going to stop on telling you about Menachem Begin, which is a well-known story. And if you have any questions, I can reply after the presentation. Yitzhak Shamir, again, himself born in Ruzhany, Brest region, 8th and 10th Prime Minister of Israel. Shimon Peres, born in Vishneva, himself. It was Poland at that time. Today it's Minsk region, 9th President of Israel. And I'd like to tell you a bit of a connection with South African community. In 1921, Isaac Oogberg, who was a leader of the South African Jewish community, rescued 200 Jewish children from Eastern Europe, mainly from Brest, during the Civil War time, and brought them to South Africa. And that way he has saved so many lives and so many families, because in Brest, at that time, there was so many Jewish orphans, and I'll give you another slide and tell you about where those orphans lived after the First World War and before the Second World War. But just to give you a heads up on Brest itself and the territory, which has a significant connection to South African Jewish community. Brest-Litovsk, as a city in Belarus, had an ancient, amazing Jewish cemetery that has been destroyed during the Second World War and during the Soviet period, which now we, together with the Brest Jewish community, with the Brest municipality, are trying to put back on the map and make a memorial together with them on a territory of where that once was a significant Jewish cemetery over thousands and thousands of gravestones. Here you can see the picture of the Warburg colony, the colony that was built for the Jewish orphans after the First World War until the Second World War, because after the First World War, many of the parents of the children were killed during that war, and Brest has been left with many Jewish orphans. And Felix Warburg, who came to Brest, who was one of the founders of the Joint Distribution Committee, has built 12 houses for the Jewish orphans in Brest. So moving from the past to the present, and just to give you a few ideas of what the Together Plan and the Jewish communities of Belarus are doing today to revive the Jewish community. Youth camps, traditions, and heritage. We hold for already 9 years the youth camps in Belarus, where the Madrihim from UK come and they teach the Madrihim in Belarus about the Jewish traditions, about the Jewish history. They share their experience, and then it goes from the Madrihim in UK to Madrihim in Belarus, and to the younger generation, to the older generation. So they spread this education, they spread this experience around Belarus in different communities. And of course, one of the main focuses of our work is Jewish education, also in a connection with the heritage, because we believe that there is no future without the past. And we're trying through our education give the members of the Jewish community, whether it's a younger generation, older generation, an understanding of the Jewish education. It's learning Hebrew, it's finding out more about the Jewish traditions. It's online support to the Madrihim in Belarus in different communities. And of course, remembering the past, our Jewish communities, they travel around Belarus, they try to save the headstones, try to help the Jewish cemeteries to be back on the map of that town, together with the Jewish communities of that towns. They go, they have the cleaning of the cemeteries, they bring up the stones, they try to fence the cemeteries. It's a work in progress, because as we understand that the territory was so rich of the Jewish heritage, and that it can't just be forgotten. And it's very important for our younger generation, in order to move forward, to find out more about their past. You see, just cleaning up the territory of the Sloaning Synagogue. And of course, it's heritage and traditions. It's a religious education. We work with different communities. We work with Orthodox communities. We work with the Reform communities. It's very difficult especially for the peripheral cities, for the communities in peripheral cities that don't have any support of a rabbi, they don't have any support of the Jewish educators. So we're trying as much as possible to bring that education, to bring into them. And this photo that you're viewing now, this is the Sluts community, a tiny, teeny community of around 100 people. And online, with the support of our other communities in Belarus, they were able to have a bar mitzvah, first bar mitzvah in the last 25 years in town, which was a very significant event for the community. And of course, remembering the Holocaust. Remembering the Holocaust, we have recently published a book, a translation of the book of the memories of the survivors of the Minsk ghetto. We work with the community of the Minsk ghetto survivors, supporting them, trying to tell the world about the story of the Minsk ghetto. Minsk ghetto was second largest ghetto in Eastern Europe after the Lvov ghetto. And of course, you can see here some of the survivors, some of the righteous Gentiles of the world, keeping together, remembering the days. And connection of generations. We believe that when there is a dialogue between the generations, when there's a dialogue between the younger generation and older generation, when the stories can be told, that's very important to keep our past, to keep our heritage in order to move forward. And then, of course, putting the Jewish heritage of Belarus on the world map. That's a Jewish press around the world. This is a Jewish press of diaspora about the events happening in around Belarus. The festivals, the British festivals in Minsk, where we're trying to tell the Jewish story to the people in Belarus, people around the country. Our devoted team, amazing team, and stories in South African Jewish Report, as bringing this piece of Belarus to you as well. We do humanitarian aid projects, as we believe that the support of the Jewish community is important, especially because the need and economy in this country is not great, and there's a lot of need. And our team in UK is working hard to get aid, humanitarian aid, clothing, hygiene products, furniture, to bring to the needy members of the Jewish community in Belarus. So you see here, you can see the unloading of a lorry in the warehouse in Minsk, which is then being distributed all around Belarus to the different communities. Of course, we as everyone in the world, we had to respond to COVID, to a coronavirus, which we immediately after the Western world has began to have quarantines. And as you know, Belarus didn't have any quarantine, but we have worked with our communities, and we gave them the guidelines. We transferred all our activity to the virtual world, to Zoom, and we've been helping the communities through Zoom. Now, this photo is very interesting. Just before the corona hit our part of the world, we were able before Pesach to bring a load of 2 tons of matzot for the community. Literally, we jumped on the last wagon and were able to bring the matzot into the country so the communities would have a matzot around Belarus. And we worked with an Orthodox community, Orthodox Union in Belarus, on that project. In distributing, of course, distantly, helping the synagogues, bringing it to the ghetto survivors, bringing it to the different communities in Belarus. Our team has worked in the warehouse. Together Plan became a member of the European Association for the Preservation and Promotion of Jewish Heritage and Culture in March 2019, which gives us an opportunity to put Belarus back on the cultural map, to be able to tell the story of Belarus. And by developing this trail, we enable Jews and non-Jews in Belarus to engage in dialogue around Belarus, Jewish history and heritage with everyone. And again, we are putting Belarus on the world cultural map back. I know that now Belarus is back on the political map and everybody talks about it. And we've been trying to put Belarus on a cultural map for several years now. And of course, this is the only way to revive and develop the community. Without remembering your past, without taking care of your heritage, there is no future development, as we believe in the communities that we work with. Thank you so much. And I hope we now still got some time for Q&A. And again, if you want to see more about our work, Go onto our website, join us, ask questions, email us, support the project that we're doing. We're open for any partnership and any conversation. Thank you.
Artur, thanks so much. So fascinating and amazing work that you're doing. I think the question, there've been quite a few questions that have come in so far, and we'll try and get to as many of them as we can. The first one, I guess, goes to the current situation, the current political unrest. Would it be possible, and I do understand that you're part of the community and you live there. So the first question maybe, just as an aside before that, is how many Jews are in Belarus today? What's the community like in terms of numbers, firstly, but also aging, young? We saw your Together Plan team is very much a young team, I guess. I saw a lot of young faces there, but what's the community like? And then most importantly, what people are asking is, what's the situation like today? And how is the community affected in the current political unrest?
Okay, so first of all, the numbers vary, but we believe that in Belarus, for now, there's around 50,000 Jews living. They're spread around different cities, but capital in Minsk, we believe that there's around 25,000. As I mentioned, that there are different denominations. We have Chabad, we have Litvaks, we have Lithuanian Hasids, which they call themselves Orthodox, and there is a Reform movement as well. It's spread around the country. Probably the most intense Jewish activity happens in Minsk. There is a lot going on in Minsk with the cultural Jewish life, with the religious Jewish life. Much less goes into peripheral cities, to the smaller towns, but we as an organization, we believe that we have to support Jews, whatever they are. We have to support them, even if there are 10 people in the Jewish community in smaller towns, we have to reach to them and help them to have their Jewish community. In regards to the current situation, I know it's so very interesting and hot these days. I would probably maybe not to give the whole sort of a brief on what's going on. Maybe there's some specific things that people would like to ask. So I won't go on for describing what happened, because I know everyone knows what happened. Everybody knows what's going on. So maybe there is some questions about the specific things, about what's going on, about things that are being published in the press or being showed on the television.
So just before we go into that, there are a lot of people that are sharing their Belarusian ancestry and where their families have come from all over the country. So thank you to that, and we'll obviously share those with Artur and Deborah after that. I think the first question that came in was really around how's the community doing. For those that, I think there might be some people on the call that don't know the ins and outs of the political unrest. We get what's shared with us on our news here, but just how's the community at the moment? I know a lot of my friends in Belarus, we weren't able to be in contact with internet at one stage. Are people safe? Are people well? Is the Jewish community involved at all in the peaceful protests? How's the community doing?
Okay, so we from the very first days of the protests and right after the election, we've been keeping in touch with our communities through our Minsk office. Basically, I was in touch with everyone. I was obviously checking on everyone. We were asking if they need any help, if there's anything going on, and all of the members of the communities, they are part of the civil society, and all of them have the right to peacefully protest. They have the right to have their voice because this is one of our goals for the community, to give them a voice, whether it's in a Jewish community or whether it's in a general community. They should be allowed to have a voice. I know that some of the members of our communities that we work with have been involved in protests and peaceful demonstrations. I know that some of them share the opinions of the protesters and opposition. Some of the members of the communities, probably mainly the middle-aged and elderly, they share the vision of the current government. But we believe that if there is a peace and if people can have a dialogue, that's the best way to keep things peaceful and calm during this uneasy political period for the country. And I have to say that most of our communities have been all right during this protest. I know that the Belarus didn't have any internet for 2 or 3 days, and I've been phoning the communities. I've been checking on them. Suddenly, you know, it's interesting just to remove from that area. When the internet's being turned off, I think the life ends for everyone. And that's how we felt here, because there was no access to outside world. We couldn't talk to anyone, and there we could only have a telephone connection. Communities didn't feel any pressure. Communities didn't feel any sort of anti-Semitic pressure if we're talking about the Jewish community. I think the issue here is very, very, very political and just political, and the opinions vary in the communities. They all share it, and I think this is what it means, you know, freedom of speech, freedom of voice. I know there has been different reports. As I always say, there are two sides of a coin. We have to hear two opinions, not just one. There's been difficulties, but at this stage, everyone stands against the violence. Everybody stands against non-peaceful demonstrations. And the most important thing for everyone and for us as an organization, not to allow the communities to be hurt, to be affected, and to become a targets from either side, whether it's current government side or oppositional side. And we do have to keep communities communicating with us, and as much as possible, we're trying to see what's needed.
Great, thanks, Artur. And I know that you have mentioned to me when we chatted on the phone that the role of the Together Plan really is to be there for all community members, whatever side of the political spectrum they are right now, and you bring that together. That's really in your mission statement.
Yeah.
People have thanked you for sharing your presentation and how just the colors and the absolute beauty of the community, which is, you know, it was going from history to the past. Sorry, from the past to the present. One of the questions that came in from Sean was, when we look at Ashkenazim in Eastern Europe, also knowing that much of the South African Jewish community is Lithuanian, what are the similarities with other Jews in Eastern Europe? Are Belarusians and Lithuanians and Estonians, are there similar customs, or are there clear differences? And then also the other question, which I think you have touched on, is just today, or how is anti-Semitism in Belarus for the community at the moment?
The similarities of Lithuania and Belarus, I would say we are the same. You know, this is the Lithuanian Hasids, and this territory of the Pale was sort of once the Great Duchy of Lithuania, and then it moved back and forward. So I would say the majority of the Jews living in Belarus would be the Litvaks, I would say. So I would say it's not even just similarity, we're the same people. And the Lithuanian people and Belarus, they share the same heritage, they share the same stories, especially the Jewish community, because once it was just one and the same, as well as other Baltics, because again, it was a pale, and everything was alike in the pale. Same difficulties, same good stuff, same synagogues, same rabbis travel back and forth. So we're the one. In terms of anti-Semitism, I have to say that Belarus, and I always said that, as once I've been working in that sector of the religious freedoms and monitoring anti-Semitism, Belarus was always a country with a very low level of anti-Semitism. And probably I have to break down here the anti-Semitism on the criminal level, anti-Semitism on the state level that used to be in the Soviet Union, as we know, from the communistic anti-Semitism, and cultural anti-Semitism. Belarus doesn't have a criminal anti-Semitism. It's never happened. Even during the Holocaust, I have to say that Belarus didn't have organized collaborative groups as other countries had, Ukraine, Poland. The Belarus people, because there was such a big Jewish population who lived side by side with the Belarusians, there was very tolerant society, and they didn't. It's like doing something to your neighbor. They were neighboring with each other. So that's why the level of anti-Semitism in Belarus was much lower. And I have to say that the number of righteous Gentiles of the world, the Belarusians who were saving the Jews during Holocaust, onto the amount of Jews that were here, is much bigger than in other countries. So basically, throughout the history, the tolerance and the goodwill of non-Jewish community was quite high. Currently, I have to say, if we compare other countries where there's a criminal anti-Semitism, Europe, France, UK, we've got probably cultural anti-Semitism. It could be on the level of people being very uneducated, or neighbors who can argue with each other. So there's a very small niche of that cultural anti-Semitism that exists in the country. And I would probably be right and confident about saying that the level of anti-Semitism in Belarus is very low.
That's wonderful to hear. We in the world that we're living in right now, that's wonderful to hear. What I do want to quickly say is that we are just about to hit 10:30 South African time. Artur has offered to answer a few more questions after the time if anyone has, just to remind everyone. And I want to just in case anyone does want to jump onto the main room chat, which we'll put that information into the chat right now. There is going to be a discussion again with Howard and with Sarit Sweezer, who's the Limud National chairperson. Just thank you so much to everyone for joining us. It's been so interesting, and as I say, we will continue the discussion as well. And Deborah has put in information around the Together plan and how you can be in touch with both Artur and Deborah into the chat. So please connect with any more questions that you may have. I also want to just quickly say that it's very late in Belarus at the moment. So Artur, thank you for being with us. We so appreciate it. And also just please remember to continue joining us we'll have another online Limud coming up on the 25th of October, which we're very excited for. Watch out for the details. And please follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We put that information there. But just for a few more minutes, so thank you again for your extra time that you've been happy to be here with. A question that came in was, do kids, teenagers leave or stay once they finish school? What's the general trend? Do they hang around? Do they stay in Belarus? Do they stay in the community? Or do you find that young people, once they finish school, leave? And if they do, where do they go to?
Well, we're talking about the Jewish community, right? I mean, this is the...
Yeah, people are asking specifically around the Jewish community.
Okay. If we're talking about the peripheral cities, we're talking about the smaller communities. Of course, some of the kids, when they finish school, they go to the universities, to the bigger cities, where they can join the community in a bigger city, whether it's Minsk or regional cities like Vitebsk, Brest, Gomel. Of course, it's not a secret that some of the kids, some of the youth, they go to Israel, they immigrate, they try to make aliyah and find their place there. Either it's Israel or other countries. But I have to say that that wave of the younger generation leaving the country that we had 10 years ago, 20 years ago, has decreased. And now we have more and more younger generation who kind of want to stay and make their future here. And I strongly believe that they feel that community is in place. If there wouldn't be a community, if there wouldn't be an opportunity to have a dialogue with the rest of the world, if there wouldn't be an opportunities to partner with other communities or meet other people from around the world, I don't think they would have this strong will to stay. But I think now, because, and again, I believe that the Together Plan has developed those links, has developed those connections, that partnership, that friendship between the countries. It's much easier to communicate. It's much easier to be everywhere, especially with the technologies now with Zoom. So I would say that the wave of youth leaving the country has decreased. A lot of kids are staying. A lot of kids are finding themselves here in Belarus, as well as a general community. So if you've seen the peaceful protests, there's so many young people. So this is also the Jewish community. This is we're all together.
Fantastic. I think the question, a question that someone asked a bit earlier, but something that I'm interested in. You spoke about a lot of Israeli leaders, that have come out of Belarus: Rabin, Peres, Begin, Shamir. What has been the relationship over the years between Israel and Belarus, and maybe even today, in terms of the current situation? Has Israel been around, present, speaking out, or speaking for so just, I guess, the relationship over the years, and maybe within the community, is there a lot of pride? Is the community generally quite Zionist? Obviously there were many years where the community was not as connected as now, but what's the relationship like with Israel from the past and currently?
Yes, indeed. So many Israeli leaders have been born here or have the roots in Belarus. And the relation between Belarus and Israel is quite good, I would say very warm, and it has significantly warmed up for the last sort of 10 years. There is a visa waiver, so Belarusians, they don't need a visa to travel to Israel. Israelis don't need a visa to come to Belarus. As because of the huge wave of immigration in 1990s and before that, so many people in Belarus have relatives who live in Israel and vice versa. So there is such an intense relationship between Israel and Belarus. I know there's Israeli cultural centers here. There's a Belarus societies in Israel. There is an ongoing conversation. A lot of Israeli business has come to the country and has been investing into Belarus. There's an embassy. Embassy is quite active in all of the events that are held by the Jewish community. Simply, and again, there is as I mentioned, a low level of anti-Semitism, and the relationship between Israel and understanding of Israel and understanding of the history is quite well in Belarus. Israel is ain't the same for the eyes of the Belarusians as it was in the Soviet Union. So I have to say, relationship equal, very warm relationship, friendly. Israel As about the current situation, we know that Israel is always keeping a neutral position in all those issues, political issues. So I haven't seen any reaction from Israeli officials about the things going on in Belarus.
Great. One question that someone asked about what's going on there, and I obviously once again comfortable to discuss or not. There is we've heard that some of the Jewish community, there were 2 guys that were arrested at some stage. I don't know if that's what the current situation. Are they okay? As you say, there have been Jewish community members obviously involved in the peaceful protests. So, but overall, you did mention that the community is safe at the moment.
Yes. Well, I've read several articles in a different Jewish press about 3 people, 2 members of the community in Minsk, and 1 person, I think, is from Israel. Again, as I mentioned, I think those 3 individual cases can't be seen outside of the general community and peaceful demonstrations. We can't be focusing on 2, 3, and there's been many others members of the Jewish community who's been in the peaceful demonstrations, and I think it's very dangerous to isolate, to pick on 2 individual cases, and they're all right. Those folks are all right. They're out. They've been detained. They've been released. And I believe we have to look at this as a general civil society, because we as the Jews, we're part of the general community. We're part of the civil society, and we have the right not to be just Jewish, but to be Belarusians and to have our voice and to have our vision. And in that case, we become Belarusians and the members of the Belarus community.
Fantastic. We're going to just, Deborah, I don't know if you want to join us for 2 minutes before we close out, but just, Artur, I want to just ask you if there's anything else. Deborah has shared with us the opportunity for youth to get involved from around the world between the age of 16 and 30. Your Youth for Youth program. So we'll definitely pass that on, at least to our Limud community within South Africa. And please, if anyone else knows anyone around the world between those ages that wants to connect with the community, we'd love to. So I think maybe just we've obviously gone over time, and I'm being called back to the main room, and I want to just give you guys just a chance to share anything else, last thoughts, message from the Belarusian Jewish community to South African Jews and Jews all around the world, as you know, who are joining us virtually. And yeah, just any last thoughts from both of you.
I mean, I would just like to say thank everybody who's stayed on here and who's attended this session. I'm based in London. Artur and I started this program in 2013, but we've been working together since 2008. If anybody wants to join us, or if anybody's looking for records, ancestry records, we can help them with that. We run an archive service. If anybody wants to follow us or support us, or can contact us with other questions or questions they didn't get a chance to ask here, please do. And as Artur said, what's going on in Belarus, it affects the whole of the society in Belarus. It's not a Jewish fight, it's a society thing. It's highly complex, and we're very happy to take it offline. If anyone wants to zoom in and talk to us separately and ask more questions, we'd be delighted to talk to you.
I also just want to say that I know that many of you might have a connection to Belarus and ancestors. We're very happy to guide you through that. We're very happy to receive your questions, your requests on maybe finding more about your family who lived in Belarus. Just email us and give us an idea what you're looking for, and we're here to help you. We're doing the genealogical researches as well. We're doing the archive researches. We've got our archive team around Belarus that are ready to help. We've been finding lots of interesting information for the people around the world. So if you do feel that you have a connection, come to us, we'll help you.
Amazing. What an amazing hour. Just history, culture, entertainment, as you say, but also just a real understanding what it's like to be a Jew in Belarus today. Artur, we're so grateful and so happy that you could be here. And Deborah and Artur, we hope that you'll join us in South Africa at a limud or at some kind of function or event at a later stage. Thank you, Artur. Thank you for being awake so late on a Saturday evening. And just thank you to everyone that joined us. Just please feel free to keep connecting in the chat if you'd like to before we leave. As we've said before, we are going to be having another online limud South Africa on the 25th of October. This was just a taste, and we've loved partnering with the South African Jewish Report. We are going to put the details back on the screen now to return back to the main room if you'd like to. And just thank you. Thanks for connecting with us. We look forward to seeing you all again soon. Shavua Tov. And thanks, Artur and Deborah. Just take care and all our best to the Belarusian Jewish community.
Bye. Thank you. Bye. All the best.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Bye.